Okay, guys, so this is a video just to help you out with simplifying expressions. So some of you, if you're watching this before we take the test, then you're watching this to kind of review, get your skills down. And if you're watching it after we've taken the test, you're watching it because you probably were not paying attention to the details. If you can follow these directions, um, then and just pay attention to details when you're looking at doing the corrections on your test, you'll see these were probably simple mistakes. This test is more about paying attention to details than anything else, and making sure you're distributing, make sure that you don't drop a negative, and that you're checking your multiplication and addition skills. So when we look at this, what we're going to do first is we're going to turn everything into addition. Because when we turn everything into addition, we can use commutative property. Okay, so when I look at the first term here is, it's already addition. When I look at this term, that's not addition. So what I'm going to do is rewrite my first expression just as negative 5x plus 12 plus, and then I'm going to rewrite the second expression as 6x plus negative 14. Okay, so now as I have these, I've written it out as addition. Now what I can do is I can combine like terms. So I'm going to look and say that I have negative 5x plus 6x, and I have 12 plus negative 14. Now what I'm going to do is combine my like terms. So I have these two, negative 5 plus 6 is positive 1x. And then when I add 12 plus negative 14, I'm going to get negative 2. And so my answer could be x plus negative 2. You could also write x minus 2. And for some of you, you might have written negative 2 plus x. That would be, those all three would be acceptable answers. Now, one of the things that we've talked about, but not very many people are using, is that you can check right now to see if you have the right answer. Because if I look at this, if I write my original equation, which is here, and if I substitute a 1 in for x there, I would get negative 5 times 1 plus 12 plus 6 times 1 minus 14, which this would be negative 5 plus 12 plus 6 minus 14. 6 minus 14, because these were in the parentheses, 6 minus 14 is negative 8, and negative 5 plus 12 is 7. 7 plus negative 8 equals negative 1. If I evaluate the first expression with any value of x, but I just plug it in, I chose 1, and then I look at this one down here, and in this expression, my answer was negative 2, and I said x was equal to 1. Negative 2 plus 1 equals negative 1. Since these two expressions evaluate with x equaling 1 to be the same thing, I could say these two expressions, that negative 5x plus 12 plus 6x minus 14 is equivalent to negative 2 plus x. So that's a way you can check any answer. If you wanted to make sure you were getting 100%, you can check that. Now, not very often do students do that, but that's the unique thing about doing this, is you could have 100% on any test if you just check, because you would recognize your mistakes, go back, check to see where the error was, find it, and while you're finding that error, you're actually learning. It's just difficult to get students to actually do that. So I've pointed it out. You can do that in any situation where you're evaluating an expression. if you've created the actual equivalent expression, when you substitute a value in, it should be able to come out to be the same amount. Let's look at this one. This one can cause some problems for people. I noticed the next one is the one probably caused the most problem on previous tests. So let's look at this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make things addition. So I'm going to look at this and say I have 7 plus negative 12x plus negative 6 plus 8x. So I've rewritten these as addition. Remember that what we talked about is if you have 4 minus 3, you can get the same result as 4 plus negative 3. This equals 1, this equals 1. So we're just using the inverse operation and using the operational inverse. So we're adding the opposite of it. So now that I've got an addition, I can move things, because we also know we can't move subtraction. 4 minus 3 is not the same thing as 3 minus 4. This gives us 1, this gives us negative 1. And so we can't commute subtraction. But now I can move my pieces around. So I could say, well, these two are like terms and these two are like terms. So I can rewrite this as 7 plus negative 6 plus negative 12x plus 8x. Now I combine these two terms. 7 plus negative 6 gives me 1. And I can combine these two terms. Negative 12 plus 8 gives me negative 4. And it's an x. Don't forget the x. Over and over again, students will finish this and they'll forget about the x. So my solution is 1 plus negative 4x. I could have negative 4x plus 1 as a solution, or I could have written 1 minus 4x as a solution for 7th grade math. In 8th grade math, they're going to tell you that the most correct solution is the negative 4x plus 1. Okay, so on this one, this is where we see a lot of problems, but what you have, the big thing you have to remember is that this y is 1y. I will see students tell me that y plus 12y is 12y. But you have to remember, that's the brother nobody talks about, right? So that's a 1y. So now all we're going to do is combine like terms. It's already addition, so we can commute things. We're going to combine like terms. So we're going to say we have 1y plus 12y plus 3x plus 10x. So 1y plus 12y is 13y. And 3x plus 10x is 13x. So you could have written it this way. You could have written 13x plus 13y, which is going to be the most correct way to write it when you're in 8th and 9th grade. Okay, so what we did was we combined like terms, but the thing that was unique that will hurt people on the test is remembering that's a 1y. A lot of people made that mistake on the previous tests in the previous years. So be careful of that. All right, now this one, we're going to do 2 subtraction problems because this is where some people make their mistakes. Okay, so be very careful in your notes on this. I would do step by step by step. I'm going to do step by step by step as I explain it. So I would really strongly suggest that you write step by step by step as you're taking notes on this so that you see it. Remember, these notes you could use on a cheat sheet if a cheat sheet was allowed on the test. And so I mean, I'd write this down and make sure you're using every step so you understand it. So the first thing we want to do is make everything addition. So I'm going to rewrite this as 12x plus negative 9 . And if I'm going to make this addition, then I've got to say it's plus negative of everything in here, which means basically what I've taught you is you would take a negative 1 and multiply everything in here times negative 1. So that means I'm going to take negative 1 times 4x and negative 1 times 6. So as I rewrite this, I have 12x plus negative 9 plus the negative 1 times 4x gives me negative 4x plus the negative 1 times the 6 gives me negative 6. So this was negative 1 times 4x plus negative 1 times 6. Okay, so now once I've done that, this is the hard part. That's the part where everybody makes their mistakes. Often people won't distribute this negative 1 over to the 6. And so now what I'm going to be doing is combining like terms. So I look and say I have x's and I have numbers. So I'm going to have 12x plus negative 4x plus negative 9 plus negative 6. 12x plus negative 4x is 8x. And negative 9 plus negative 6 is negative 15. That right there is an acceptable answer. You could have also written 8x minus 15. And I would accept negative 15 plus 8x. And to note, so you understand, this answer is the 8x minus 15 is the most acceptable answer in 8th grade. That's the expected answer. You're going to do things in the descending order of the powers of x. Okay, so with this one, again, we're going to take care of making everything addition. So when I write this out, I'm going to have 5x plus negative 6. And then this is subtraction of negative 3x plus negative 4. So my next step would be to take this subtraction here and make it addition. So I write 5x plus negative 6 plus negative 1 times negative 3x plus negative 4, which means I'm going to be distributing the negative 1 to these two. And that's the problem, is most people only just put it here, they forget to distribute it back to that negative 4. Because in reality, what we're saying is, what's the opposite of negative 3x and the opposite of negative 4? So we're going to have 5x plus negative 6 plus negative 1 times negative 3x plus negative 1 times negative 4. And once I've made it all addition, I can drop my parentheses, since all these terms would be unlike terms. Now I'm going to have 5x plus negative 6 plus negative times a negative is a positive, so that's going to be positive 3x. And a negative times a negative is a positive. Negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. So now I'm going to combine like terms. So I have 5x plus 3x, and I'm going to have negative 6 plus 4. So I'll write those out. 5x plus 3x plus negative 6 plus 4. 5x plus 3x is 8x. Negative 6 plus 4, positive 4 is negative 2. So my correct answers would be either 8x plus negative 2. 8x minus 2 would give us the same result. Or for those that looked at things a little different, you might have written negative 2 plus 8x. All of those answers are acceptable answers. The 8x minus 2 is the most correct answer. Now again, that's the last problem I'm gonna work through, and this is about attention to detail. But as we look at this problem, if I want to check if my answer is equivalent, because what you've done is we've created this expression, and we're saying that this expression is equivalent to the first original expression. So if I want to check if these are equivalent, and I just plug a value into x. Now the most simple one to put in is 1. So if I were to write 5 times 1 minus 6 minus negative 3 times 1 minus 4. And that means I'm going to have 5 minus 6 minus negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7, which 5 minus 6 is negative 1 minus negative 7. And that's 2 eyes and a nose. When we subtract a negative, we get the same result as when we add a positive. So that's going to be negative 1 plus 7, which means that's going to be positive 6. So when I plug a 1 into the original expression, I get 6. If I've done this correctly, then when I put a 1 into x for this expression, it would come out to be 6 also. So negative 2 plus 8 times 1, which is going to be negative 2 plus 8, and negative 2 plus 8 is 6. So this is equivalent, 6 is equivalent to this 6. So I have the correct final expression. And I know this is finished because it's fully simplified. There's no leftover pieces. Okay, well, hopefully that helped you. If you watch this video and you have these notes, you have taken the notes necessary to do the test corrections document, rework the problems that you got wrong on 5B, and then now what you can do is once you've done that, you've reworked it, you've explained what you did right and what you learned, then you bring that up to me, we sign it, and you get to do the practice problems and retake the test. Okay, good luck.